Hello everybody for today's online training with the topic user authorization and workspaces. Is a topic where we spent a lot of efforts in the last weeks and months to implement it, and today we will give you an insight how we redesign user authorization and what our new approach workspaces can help you in the field of authorization and to handle a mess of data. My name is Matthias Scholze, I'm the CTO of Virtual.io, and Fabian Klose today is on my side to take over the live demonstration a little bit later. Let us start. At first, three informations for you. You all have access to our live demo virtual environment so that you can try and test things by your own. The slides that I show you in the next minutes we will provide you, and we will record the session for all participants that now have the chance to be a part today on the session. Okay, then let's start. A short agenda. At first, what is the motivation and the objective that we spend so much effort in this topic? What is the authorization concept of Virtual.io? How we can implement the user authorization in Virtual.io, how we can configure and use workspaces in Virtual.io. Then Fabian will give us a live demo, seeing is believing is the motto today. And in the end, I will give you some ideas what are the best practices to handle user groups and workspaces. And in the last point, we give you an outlook. What are the plans in these fields for 2025? We love to get feedback from you for this training, and then we have a Q&A session for open questions from your side. Let's start with the motivation. Motivation is every time the increased requirement from our clients, and the most important requirement is that we can restrict the access, the access for users on the data level. Yeah, that means it's a very special requirement, and we did talk with our customers in the last months and years about this feature, and now we have implemented in the platform. From our perspective, it's a little bit a game changer, because now we are able to restrict the authorization on the functional level and on the data level. And that's very helpful for our customers if they work in an environment with different departments and different responsibilities. Then it's helpful. Or we live in a world of cybersecurity, and you all know the need to know principle. And if you want implemented in your environment, then you need such kind of functionality. And we call that workspace. Yeah? If we change things in the authorization sector, then every time it's a good idea to redesign, to optimize, to simplify the user authorization that we did in the same thing too. And in the same thing, we optimize the authorization of administrators in Virtual.io. We talk about administrators for the system, the whole system, the platform instance, and the environment. Therefore, we have now default admin user groups available for the system and the environment, and it makes more easier to handle the administration rights in Virtual.io. Now let's start with some terms, with some term definitions. We have some platform-specific terms. We talk about platform, environment, and user. And on the right side, we talk about environment-specific things the user group and workspaces. Platform means it's an installation of the Virtual.io software stack. Yeah? And if you are a user of our Virtual.io SaaS instance, then that means it's operated by Virtual.io itself. And the platform handled by Virtual.io. And if you are a customer with an own instance, that means you installed Virtual.io in your own data center, then we call that Virtual.io managed. It's an on-premise installation. Environment is a term that describes a logical separation of data and configuration. That means with environments we can separate, for example, test and production stage, or we can separate customer A and customer B or something like that. Yeah? That means you can also take the word multi-client capable environment platform. And it means every environment has own data, has own user authorizations, has own users, and can be a part of company A and company B. Users in Virtual.io are every time a part of the platform. That means to have access to the environment, we have a lot of users, and you need an assignment to a user group that we will discuss on the right side in a minute, to have access to this environment. But it means if you reduce the user groups rights for a customer, then he loses the access to environment, but he's every time a part of the platform. On the right side, we have user group. User group is a new term in the part of this implementation, and it's defined a group of users, of authorization rights and workspaces. That's a new concept that we implement here, and where we have the chance to set up a new authorization field. And here we have the sentence, if a user has no assignment to a user group, then he has no access to environment. And if you give him an assignment to a user group, then he get access to the environment. That is the game. You know? If no workspace is defined in a user group, then the user has access to all data in this environment. If you have restrictions, then you can see only the data in the field of workspaces. And workspaces are logical assignments of data instances in this environment. Yeah? Genau. And workspaces you can use for authorization, and you have the possibility to use workspaces for filtering too. We will see later. Okay, let's try to visualize these terms to get a better understanding. That means we have the Virtual.io platform. In the platform we can have more than one environment. In every environment I can define workspaces, but it's not necessary to do it. You can see that here in the environment C, perhaps we work without workspaces. That's possible too. Yeah. Then we have user groups in the environment because they are environment specific. And you can see that we have environment or we need user groups in every environment, and the user group can have an assignment or a relation to a workspace. And you can see here, for example, in environment A, the user group 2 has no relation to a workspace, and that means this user group has access to all data in this environment. Okay. And all these user groups can assign to a user. The user are outside from the environment, are platform specific, and I can say, okay, user X has access to this user group, and so on. And if the user has an assignment in a user group, then this user has access to the environment. That's the game in Virtual.io, to authorize people to have access to the data, to functionality that we provide with Virtual.io. Okay, then for all guys of you that work a long time with Virtual.io, here the comparison between environment versus workspace. Both approaches are combinable. Yeah, that's the good choice. That means up to now we work with environments, and with environments we can split data so that we can say, okay, department A and department B get separated environments so that they can't see the data from each other. Today, with workspaces, we can say, okay, we bring all data together in one environment and we can split it via workspaces. And the advantage is that we can change the authorization dynamically, yeah, because we have all data in one environment, and we only change the authorization configuration. That is an advantage. And we can have users that can see, for example, the data, all the data, that means from department A and department B. Yeah? That's a big advantage, and the customer has to decide, if he starts with Virtual.io, which concept he wants to use and how he can combine the environment and the workspace concept. Here we can see the new system administrator configuration. It's only interesting for all of you that operate in Virtual.io managed. That means an on-premise instance. That means we have here now a standard environment with the name platform administration. If you have access to this environment, then you can administrate other people, to make him to an administrator or to delete this right, and you can handle the server settings here. Yeah? That's only important for people that operate an own Virtual.io managed instance. If we have a managed or a SaaS instance, it's independent. We have environments, and each environment has an administrator. And if you have access to this environment and you are an administrator, then you can go here in the environment settings to the point access management. Here we have in the tab user groups, all user groups listed, and here are a default user group with the name environment administrators, and that means if you put someone in this group, then he will be an administrator for this environment. And the administrator means he has access to all data, he can make all configuration in this environment, can use all functionality, and so on. Next thing is how we can create and manage user authorizations. For that, we should create a workspace. It's an optional task if you only need it if you needs this workspace in your user group. The most important part is create a user group, define a descriptive and understandable name, not for you, for all others that use this user group, and then you can decide which users are a part of this user group. You can push on or off the user rights that are assigned with this user group, and you can assign workspaces for this user group. And that means in this case you can say, okay, you have only access for a specific range or group of data that we have here stored in Virtual.io. The most customers has 10,000, 100,000, 1 million configuration items and assets stored in the Virtual.io environment, and that's why that is the right point to say you have only access for a specific group of instances, for example, only for all SSL certificates, only for network devices, only for the host, or whatever you inventory in Virtual.io. Okay, and if you create a new user, then he needs every time assignment to a user group. That's why if you create a new one, you have to choose one user group, and then you can invite the user to this environment. Very easy, and that's good. And here is the most important point. If a user has no assignment to a user group in this environment, then the user has no access to this environment. That's the game. Okay, now we talk about workspaces. Workspaces are the grouping of data for filtering and to make a user authorization on this data level. Therefore, we have to create a workspace. We will see that later in the live demo too. And we have to describe a name and a good description that all people can understand what does it mean in this workspace. And we can define the rules on the base of which the inventoried instance can be assigned to the workspace. And we have here different layers where you can define things. For example, you can say specific entities are a part of this workspace. In this case, all host entities the user will get an access. And we can see here another rule that said, okay, I can choose which one importer or one gate that are our agents are a part of it. And so we have more than one possibilities to assign data to a specific workspace. And here in the button you can see the instances. This means, for example, you can create a workspace and can assign only one data piece that we stored in Virtual.io, and so fine granularity is possible to define here. One important point is that all configurations of a rule are OR, and all rule types are end-linked. That's very important. That means I can say this user has access to the host, to the process, to the service. This is an OR, logical OR combination, and all the different rules are combined on the end logic. Yeah? And so we have a very strong possibility to define which data are a part of which workspace. And every piece of data can be a part of 0 or more than one workspaces. If we use workspaces, then it's nice to know which instance is a part of the workspace. Therefore, I can use the filter, we will see that later. But if we go to our instance viewer and I change to the metadata, then I will get detailed information about the instance. And here we found also the information which workspaces are designed assigned to this instance. Here we can see that this host is a part of the workspace with the name Virtual.io dev environment. And that can be more than one workspace because you can define a lot of workspaces and they can separate the data very fine granular. Okay, how I can use workspaces? Yeah. If I use different users, then I log in with different users and have different views because I have only access to specific data group. And on the other hand, I have here in the top of Virtual.io the possibility to select a workspace where I have access. Yeah? And you can see that here on the right side, if I open this filter, I can see all assigned workspaces for me, and so I can filter everything what I can see in the Virtual.io UI that I can filter here. And if I change the filter, I see different things of data because my access to the data is restricted for this specific group of data. Yeah. Okay, and now we are in the live demo. I will give over the control to Fabian and enjoy.
Thank you. So I will switch from the slides to my browser. And as Matthias said, we created a new environment on our SaaS platform, and all of you should have access to this environment. And if you want, you can follow my steps now, or you can just watch me and you will have access till the end of the next week to this environment, and you can recreate our steps maybe by your own afterwards. For today, we prepared an environment with some instances, so we have some data inside, and we also prepared some workspaces here. So the first thing I want you to show is how to work with the workspaces, how to use them as a filter, and afterwards I will show you how to configure workspaces by your own. So the first thing you will mention if you're working with workspaces is this new icon in the top right in our navigation bar here. And that's our workspace selector. So if I click on it, it will open a list of workspaces that I can now select to enter this workspace. Every user has the all workspace, that is nothing we have configured, that is default. And the all workspace means that I'm looking into all data I have access to. So that means if I'm a user that does not have access to everything inside an environment, maybe just to one or two workspaces, the all workspace is the combination of everything I have access to. If I now click to one of the workspaces, for example the certificates, SSL certificates production, it's doing a small reload here, and we see our dashboard changed, and now we have only 8 instances inside here that we are looking into. That means our workspace is configured to have access to just some subset of instances that are in our environment, and every view I'm going into now is filtered automatically to this subset of assets. So I can go back and do it again. If I'm switching back to the all, I can see everything in our environment, and you see we have not only certificates, we have processes, configuration, we also have data centers and a host. And I can use the selector to switch to different workspaces here. I will use another one here. In our SSL certificates testing are only 7 assets here. So if I'm going to our inventory to show you a different view, we also just can see the 7 different certificates. I will go back again to all, and then you will see I have more than 7 certificates inside here. I have 15, and if I add all the other entities, I will see everything inside here. So if I go into one of the certificates, for example, I can show you in the instant metadata that the instance itself knows in which workspaces it is a part of. So for example, I added a certificate from Apple into our testing workspace here, and we can see the Apple certificate is part of the workspace where all certificates are assigned to, and to a specific one where only the testing certificates are assigned to. So I will select another example, maybe the host, because the host is not assigned to any workspace here. So it says instance is not part of any workspace. That means the workspaces are a complete optionally feature. You don't have to use them if you don't need it or if you don't want to use it. And everything works like before if you don't configure any workspaces. So that's the first part. If you're working with the assets, you can use the workspace filter for reducing your scope, your browsing with the workspace filter. This is especially helpful if you have thousands or even millions of assets, and you can create maybe groups for a dev environment and a prod environment, or for customer A and customer B. If we are now creating configurations in our Virtual.io environment, for example, a topology or a change task. Okay, so for example, if we are working with a topology, then you will find a workspace selector also in the configuration of the topology. And as you can see, because I have nothing selected right now, the selector says it's environment right now. So the workspace is part of the topology, and you can see I created some predefined topologies here for today, and you can find this little box here and the name of the workspace to it if the topology is saved to a specific workspace. That means not only assets are assigned to a workspace, but also configuration like topologies, change tasks, and policy groups. That's important because if we are working with an topology, and I can open this, we can only see some of our SSL certificates here, but my user I'm logged in right now has access to more than these one we can see right now. But it's important if we are working with colleagues that we save a topology and everyone who is open this topology sees the same topology. Otherwise, it can be quite confusing and not deterministic for using these topologies. That means the other topology I have saved here is the same one, but it's not scoped to a workspace, and it will look like the same, but has also the other certificates inside here. That means if I'm creating also new topologies or new change tasks or whatever, I have to say, where do I want to save this topology? Do I want to save it environment-wide? And maybe I have not the right to do it environment-wide, then I'm forced to select a workspace where I want to save the topology. And to force our users to use the workspace selector in the top right, you cannot change the workspace in the configuration at the topology if you want to create a new topology in a specific workspace. You can just change the workspace to a different one, for example, for the SSL certificates production. And yeah, right now we are not allowed to see the topology we had still open. And if we want to save a topology now, you see the workspace selector is set to the same you are using in the filter top right. And if I save a new topology now, or I can also edit this one is scoped to the configured workspace. So this works the same for the change task also. That means if I create some here and say, and I'm still in my production certificates workspace, and for example I want to do a change and I only have certificates here, then we see 8 of our certificates that are that would be part of this change task. But I can also change this, and if I'm going back, for example, to all, then we see the workspace selector here also changed, and if I'm doing certificates here, we see there are more than 8. That should be 15, I think. Yeah. So the workspace selector in the top right is important if you want to filter things, but also if you want to add specific configurations that should be scoped to a specific workspace. And it also works the same for policy monitoring. If you create a new group, you have the same selector here, and you can change the workspace to scope this policy group to a specific workspace. And if I create this one, this has no policies right now, but that's not important for today. We can see also in our overview here that this workspace, that this policy group is scoped to this workspace. Okay, so now we used our workspace to filter things in our asset management, so you can browse the data scoped to specific groups, and I showed you how to create different configurations that are also part of a workspace. Now let's have a look into the configuration of workspaces, how you can add workspaces, how I configured all of these workspaces. So we will use our environment settings, and you will find everything that belongs to workspaces, users and user groups under access management. And we will start with the workspace configuration. So you will find a list. In this case, our 4 workspaces we also have in our selector. And maybe let's start with the first one. So we have a workspace that is called SSL Certificates All, and my intention was to add every SSL certificate to this workspace. That's quite easy because we're using workspace assignment rules here. And the first rule allows me to add complete entities. That means every asset that is an SSL certificate will be added automatically to this workspace. I could also add more things here than, for example, all applications and all SSL certificates would be added here. So this is combined via an OR logic. I can also use for every assignment rule a whitelist or a blacklist. This helps sometimes if I want to say every SSL certificate, or I can switch that would say everything that is not an SSL certificate that would be assigned now. So, but I don't want to do it now, so I discard this one, and the entity assignment is quite easy, I think, so let's go to the next one. I will jump over this one, we will do this for the last one, and let's have a look to the SSL certificates for our production certificates. Because we have multiple certificates and they are splitted for testing and production, I cannot use the complete entity. I can use other informations here, and here I use the one importer and one gate importer configuration. What does it mean? So to understand the other assignment rules, we need to understand where is our data coming from. If I'm going to our importer configuration, so I open this in the new tab, and I show to you that we have running one of our agent, and that is doing all of our tasks here for importing our data. So this agent gives us information about the host, and you see we have 2 certificate configurations assigned here. And that's important to understand that I already splitted our production certificates here for some of our Virtual.io domains from the testing domains where I put them in another configuration. And that's important because I can now use these informations, these names I have gave them in our workspace settings. Because I already splitted them here, I can say, I'm switching back to our workspace configuration. I can use this name here for configuration of the workspace. That means every certificate that comes from the production certificates, and that's the name I gave them, will be assigned to this workspace. So if I click here, we should see the second one. Right now we only have 2. And I can say every asset that will be imported from this configuration will be assigned to this workspace. So that's it, because I created an one importer configuration with all production certificates. I can use it here, and I have a workspace with only my production certificates inside. Let's see the other certificate workspace for testing. Yeah, it would be quite easy to do the same thing here, just with the testing certificate, but I want to show you also how to use the other ones. So the other possibilities is to assign complete one importer or one gate. That means that's the only one we have installed right now. And if I will remove the other one, if I just do it like this, then every asset is assigned to this workspace that is coming from this specific agent. And I can combine these filters. For example, I can say in the next part, I can use one importer and one gate importer types. That is the list you will find also if you are configuring your agents. That means that is the list on the left where you decide what things you want to import. That means I can say, okay, I want to add everything from this agent, but only SSL certificates configuration. That would add all SSL certificates that are imported, that get imported from this agent. In our case right now, that would be all SSL certificates. But I could also say, okay, yeah, maybe all certificates and all Juniper network devices, for example. And to filter this a step more, because right now it would be all certificates, the same like if I would use the entity here, I can select now the configuration here too, and I could say I'm using the testing certificates. That would be easy, but I can also keep in mind that we maybe add more configurations later. That means maybe I want to have everything or every certificate in that workspace that does not belong to our production certificate. So I could say I'm using the production certificate, but I'm using a blacklist here. So if I add more configurations later, then they will also get added to this workspace automatically. And the last assignment rule here is also quite simple. You can add instances, specific instances by your own. So you could search here for, yeah, you can search all your assets and you can say, yeah, this specific asset that belongs here, then you can also add it here and you can add more. Okay. So, because I don't want to save it now, I will discard this. And as always, there is one yeah, there's a special use case for manual instances. So as said, we are looking at last in our data center documentation, and you will see there is no assignment rule configured. So that's why, and it's like this because I don't need anything here. I just created this one because I wanted the workspace to have this name, and I want to use it to put my data center assets inside here, and data center assets I have created manually. That means if you are working with assets that are not coming from our agent, then you also need a possibility to give them or to assign them to a workspace. And if you add assets, you will do it about the Add Instance button in our Asset and Configuration item inventory. And here you will find also a workspace selector, like in the change task or in the the policy group, for example. And I can now add instances here like before, and I also have to use the workspace selector in the top right and can say, okay, for example, data center documentation. And you see I have already 2 data centers inside here. And if I want to add another one, I can add it, and it's already pre-selected. And let's create one. Let's say this is our data center in Paris, for example. And I have to say it's a data center. And no. So, and I create this one, and this one is automatically assigned to our data center documentation workspace. We can see it in our metadata here, and we know it because we are already in this workspace, and if I'm not in this workspace, I'm not allowed to see this instance anymore. So that's how it works for topologies, for change tasks, for policy groups, and for manually instances. And there's just one last piece to understand here, and that's our reporting. In our reporting, and therefore I'm going first back to all so we can see everything. In our reporting, the saved reports are not assigned to a workspace. That means everyone who has access to the reporting engine is allowed to see every report. If it's shared, if it's your own, then not. But if it's shared, then everyone can use it. But you can also use the workspaces here if you're using the selector in the top right. So right now I have no workspace selected. I can see all of our 15 certificates, and if I'm now switching for our production certificates, for example, I can use the same report but get just a subset of data. In this case, only the 8 that have to do with our Virtual.io domain. Okay, so that's it, how you can work with workspaces while browsing Virtual.io. I showed you how to create workspaces using the assignment workspace rules. And the last thing I want to show you now is the user groups where you can add or where you can restrict users to specific workspaces. That means in our environment here we have 3 user groups right now. The first one is the default for the environment administrators. In this case, it's only me and Matthias who is inside this group. And we created the second one with all training participants for today. And I created the third one. And the third one is an example here that I can show you how it would look like for a user who has no access to to everything in the environment. So we created an example user, that's our colleague John Dory, and after assigning them to the user group, we said that are his rights, his permissions, and you see in the bottom he has an assignment to 2 specific workspaces. So I want this user to only see assets that are inside the data center documentation workspace and that are only inside the SSL certificates for production. That means I can log out now from my super admin account, and I will switch to the John Doe user, and this one should not be able to see anything more than he's allowed. And if you already see, then you see the dashboard is different because you can only see 11 instances that are some certificates and some data centers. And if I'm open the workspace selector, he only has access to 2 different workspaces that we assigned him. And in his case, the all workspace is the combination of both. So he can use the workspaces by itself to say, okay, I want to browse only the data center part here, but he has no ability to see, for example, the host or the processes, because we not give him an assignment to see this asset. And for example, if we go to the topology, then he can also only see the topologies and also the change task and policy groups that are assigned to workspaces he has access to. So he can load this topology and he will see the same picture, but he has no access to different instances or different topologies, and he's not able to see other policy groups. I'm not sure if we we created a policy group and we put it in a workspace where our John Doe have no access to, so he's not able to see this policy group and also not the results of this policy group. That means different users now have different views of the same page, because every page is reduced to the asset they are allowed to see. And everything works with the assignment of workspaces and the assignment of workspaces to a user group. So you are invited to use this environment afterwards, and you can also add maybe a second user of your own, so you can give your own user groups, give your own workspace assignments, and you can use this environment. And now I will give back to Matthias.
Thank you, Fabian, for this great live demo. Seeing is believing as a motto to do that. And for all customers and partners that use our Virtual.io API, the workspace will be supported too. Here, that means if you interact with Virtual.io via API, then here you found 2 examples. If you, for example, ask Virtual.io, give me all give me all host of an environment, then you can reduce the amount of host for a specific workspace. Or if you save or update an instance in Virtual.io via the API, that you can say, please store it in this workspace. Yeah, and that means it's the concept of the workspaces is full implemented in the whole platform. That's very important, and so we can give you the support in all functionalities that you can use, authorization and workspaces. From my side, some best practices, what we learned if we start to configure our own environment and environments from our customers. If you have a bigger Virtual.io environment with a lot of people, a lot of workspaces, a lot of user groups, then it's every time good to create an authorization concept that all people has an understanding what is the concept behind the workspaces and the user groups. And every time it should be a target to have only few user groups and workspaces yes, to avoid the complexity of the authorization concept and the implementation in Virtual.io. One tip from my side is make an effort when naming user groups and workspaces. That's very important to have an understanding. Perhaps you have 10 or 20 user groups or workspaces. Then sometimes it's very difficult to understand the differences between it. That's why choose very good names and we have a description option. Use this to make clear for all your team what is a part of this user group, what is a part of the workspace. Here, a procedure, a recommended procedure, how you can start with creating new workspaces. That means install a one importer or one gate and do not activate it. Create an import configuration and do not activate it. Then you create the workspace. Then you can assign the agents or the importer configurations. And after that, you activate the importer configuration and the agent too. That means then it's a clear decision. If the data comes in, then they are tagged from the workspace perspective in the right form. Yeah, and that makes a little bit easier if you start to creating new workspaces that you use this procedure. Yeah. If you make changes in a workspace configuration, then it's only take effect after the new inventory process. That means if you have an agent running and you change the workspace definition, then after the next import of this agent, the workspace identification in the instance will be set. And that's very important to know. And in the past, we talk often with customers about topologies, and topologies are not so workspaces are more resource efficient than topologies, because topologies have to be determined dynamically. That means every time if you use a topology, then we have to detect all things dynamically, what is a part of the topology. And in the workspace area, it is another approach. That means every time if we import, then we tag this instance with the right workspaces, and therefore it's very resource efficient, very performant to filter things. That's why for us it's a really good game changer to use more with workspaces like topologies. Topologies are very, very good to use to understand the context of, for example, your IT landscape, that you can say, okay, I have here an application, which part of my IT landscape, which services, which processes, which hosts, which hyperscaler or hypervisors are a part to deliver this application. Therefore, topologies are very important in Virtual.io and very helpful. You can use it as a filter too, but only to group data, then it's easier and more resource efficient to use workspaces. Okay, that's all for today. At last, short outlook, what we plan in 2025. We will revise the authorization rights to more be detailed, more granularity we will support here. And we are thinking about a reprocess function. That means if you change a workspace definition, then you will find a reprocess button to make sure that after that all instances are had the right assignment to the workspace. We will see how it works on your site without the reprocess, and yeah, that's why we're thinking about that. We would be very happy if you can give us feedback for this training, write it in the chat, give it us in our next appointment, or write us an email. We are happy if you can give us some feedback to improve yeah, the kind of training that we offer for customers and partners and interests here. And yeah, now we are in the end, and it's time for your questions.